well as ways to teach our students from kindergarten all the way to 5th grade. So let's get started. So the world is a special place, and each country has a system in place that provides leadership for how it will work. For our younger students, we build awareness and we teach vocabulary. And for our older students, we want to create a safe place for them to learn and practice the workings of the voting process. So let's start from the beginning. So what kinds of governments are there? And this would probably be where you would start with 4th or 5th grade, our older students. There are 5 main governments. Authoritarian, and this is where the government has total control. It's a regime that has obtained power by force, and a small group holds the power, but not the people. So an example of this would be Cuba. Democracy is the people hold the power, and examples include Canada, Sweden, and the United States. And then monarchy, and this is where one family rules the country. It's passed down from generation to generation. It can be absolute with like a king controlling the government, or a constitutional monarch where there's a royal family, but they're mostly ceremonial figures. So an example of this might be the United Kingdom with the Queen, Queen Elizabeth, and Parliament, where Parliament has more governmental control. The next type of government is oligarchy. This type of government places power in a few people. It's usually not passed down from family to family, like down through family or even bloodlines. Instead, it could be a group of people, such as the wealthy. Examples of this would be China and the Soviet Union. And then totalitarian is the last type of government we're going to look at tonight. And this type of government takes absolute power to the extreme. These leaders have control not only of the government, but of the personal lives of their people. So citizens would have no say in the government, and they could be forceful and extreme. So an example to maybe think of is Nazi Germany with Hitler for totalitarian. I would share this and talk about this with my older students. And then I would kind of focus more on the one that the United States utilizes, and that is democracy. And democracy is the power vested in the people and used by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation where periodically there are free elections. The United States utilizes democracy as its format of government. And many Americans are still in the dark when it comes to knowing and acting upon their rights and responsibilities as citizens in a democratic society. And so you could have lots of great discussions, especially with 5th graders, about that. In democracy, it's ruled by the majority. It's a government by the people, and the example is, of course, the United States. This book is Deeper Democracy by Alyssa Grodin, and it's an ABC book. However, it goes through the process of our government structure from the early beginnings to like things like immigration and taxation, founding fathers, first ladies, and the First Amendment to the presidential oath of office. And so there's lots of details about the political processes, parties, and various people of democracy, American style. So what is our plan for the government if we are a democracy and the power is vested in the people, and How do we know what the plan is? And so for our older students, we would talk about that the framers of the Constitution established three branches of government: the legislative, executive branch, and judicial branch. Each branch is separate and has its own responsibilities. And these men knew that it was better to keep the power in check with a system of balances where not one person had too much power. My students are always interested and fascinated to learn about the inner workings of the federal government. So the government plan is the Constitution. So many teachers know in September we're familiar with Constitution Day, and it's a wonderful opportunity to have the students in the 3rd through 5th grades look and analyze the Constitution itself, break it down, talk about what it means, things of this nature. Let them read it, handle it. So, and then we would talk about the three branches of the federal government. With the legislative branch, getting a bill passed, what is that like? When does the legislature meet, and how is the Congress made up and the House of Representatives? Then we might talk about the executive branch, signing laws, how the president is a military leader. He directs foreign policy, appoints justices, and has the power to veto laws passed by government. And then the judicial branch. The Supreme Court is the head of the court system, and it is made up of 9 justices, and they interpret if the laws are following the Constitution. And Ruth Ginsburg was one of these justices who just passed away recently. So this would mean that the president would appoint a new justice to serve in her place. Students are always fascinated. So if the founding fathers didn't want one person to hold all the power, who can be president? So there are some requirements, and so in order to be president, you'd have to be 35 years old or older, be a resident in the United States for at least 14 years, and be a natural born citizen of the United States. And students want to know, what does the president do? So kind of going back to those 3 branches, as a legislative leader, the Constitution gives the president the power to sign acts of Congress into law, or veto any bill. So an example of this might be the legislative leader role is when President Lyndon Baines Johnson was signing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. As an executive officer, what does the president do? Well, he enforces the U.S. laws, creates policies. He can hire and fire officials within the executive branch, and then appoint federal judges. So an example of this type function might be President John F. Kennedy issuing the executive order to launch the Peace Corps. And then as a political party, he's the head of the political party. He can use his influence to back party candidates. And I say he and his, but it could be he or she. They could raise money for the House or Senate campaigns. And an example of this role is President Donald Trump holding campaign rallies for Republicans running for office. So when I'm teaching, after I've kind of gotten past the who can be a president and how did we get to democracy and things like that, I'm going to look for activities that really foster vocabulary. One activity is true and false. So I might display statements with election rate related vocabulary, and students can use hand signals or cards to vote if it's true or if it's false. And you're able to assess vocabulary mastery this way. You could do it on your interactive whiteboard or hand signals if you're virtual or in person as teachers with their classrooms. A second activity that fosters vocabulary is teaching them the teen challenge. You break them up into small groups and present a term with some multiple choice options, and then take turns choosing the correct definition. Usually if it was in person, you could do this in breakout rooms or appoint or assign a team leader to speak for your group. The team with the most correct answers would win. A third activity is Call My Bluff. And this is a fun one because you call on 3 students and you're going to give them a term and they're going to present the definitions, but secretly you're going to only give the correct definition to one of them. And so the other 2 have made up definitions. And so that's kind of fun to assess mastery. And then if you see that, oh, the students really don't understand this term or this concept, you can go back and reteach as appropriate. So what does it mean to vote? As I'll tell my students, it's your way to be represented in government. And it's that means when you vote, you're making your needs and values known to the leaders of your country, your state, and your city. Your vote is your voice. If you don't use your voice, no one will hear you. So being able to vote means you're having the right to choose. So we've been kind of focused on like upper grades and what that might look like. And so now I want to kind of shift gears a little bit to what it might look like for my younger students. And this might be kinder all the way to 3rd grade. You're really just talking with them about what does it mean to be a good citizen. And they'll want to be good citizens. And so they'll learn that part of understanding about what voting is being a good citizen, and that they have rights, freedoms that are protected, and responsibilities, duties, and things you should do as a good citizen to help your community. And activities you can do with your students include book studies, write letters, create posters, role play, have mock elections. So I'd like to talk a little bit about books you could use for your younger grades. And I teach 2nd grade, and so all of these that I'm going to share would be appropriate for that. I currently teach 2nd grade. So for my younger grades, I would just start off with like, what is it? What are examples of good citizenship? We might have a book study. I love The Empty Pot. It's about Ping, and the emperor gives seeds to all the children, and they've all been cooked and boiled, but the kids don't know that. So they go and they come back the next year, and Ping tells the truth, and his seed did not grow, and his pot is empty. So he is rewarded for telling the truth. The other students come back with big elaborate flowers. But in fact, they shouldn't have flowers because the seeds were cooked. So it's a great book about honesty and why it's important to tell the truth. Stregonona by Tommy DePaula is another book, and it's a great illustration of the importance of being responsible and why that's important. Brave Irene, she goes to deliver a package for her mother who's sick and to a duchess. And so she really battles the wind in the snowstorm. And just, it's a great illustration of being responsible and having determination to get through a task. Other examples of books include Last Stop on Market Street by Matt de la Pena, and just the importance of connection and community. So important to have. Who Will I Be by Abby Huntsman. Just the power of service and giving back and how it impacts you as a person. And then Be Kind by Pat Miller. This is a great little book because it's told from a little girl's point of view, but gives so many examples about what citizenship could look like and what it could be. And it also frames it so wonderfully for students. So that's Be Kind. And we talk about all of these things are part of citizenship. It could be at the level of in a classroom, it could be at the level of a family, or it could be at the level of a community. So what are some ways to be a good citizen? Take a stand for a cause, vote, care for others, helping, giving, paying attention, caring about the environment. It's our responsibility to make things better, use our words, and not hurt others to make things better in the world. So ways to inspire students. This is a great book, Grace for President. The setting of this story is in a classroom at a school, and students have an election for class president. What makes this book so magical is that the students vote utilizing the Electoral College. And I've used this book many times to help explain the Electoral College. And I've even had like a whole class just be so inspired they stood up and clapped at the end of reading the book. So it's just a great book to show, even at a student level, how to make change and what it's like to run and follow through with what you say in an election. Students like Duck for President. This book is in a farm setting. The animals have some challenges and they vote to make change. And it models a community rallying for change, and Duck rises through the ranks of governor and president. It's a comical way to introduce the election process, but it has a lot of satire in it also, where Duck kisses babies or goes on the Tonight Show to play a musical instrument, things like that we've seen over the years. Another great book is V for Voting by Kate Farrell, and it introduces progressive families to concepts like social justice and civil rights. And it reminds readers that every vote really does count. And so it's a great book in that way. Today on Election Day by Catherine Steer. This book takes place in a school gym, and the school gym is utilized as a polling place. And so the family helps their aunt run for a seat on city council, and different members of the family go and vote. Some are voting for the first time. Some are remembering what it was like years ago to not be able to vote. So it's a look forward and a look past and how far we've come. So One Vote, Two Vote, I Vote, You Vote by Bonnie Worth. It's a Cat in the Hat version book. But don't let that fool you, because it's perfect for like President's Day or just learning about the process of elections and voting. Um, so it talks about what is voting and has ideas about, in principle, like it just shares the concepts and understanding of democracy, how political parties are formed, and why Election Day is held in early November. So it covers a lot more than you would just think as a Cat in the Hat book. It's also told in a rhyming format, so that can make it kind of fun. It is a nonfiction book too. So when we're looking at our older students, grades fourth and fifth grades, we want to also introduce the difference between the popular vote versus the state vote. And a couple of ways to do that include have your students just vote for two candidates in a mock election and tally the votes and explain that this is the popular vote for that class or whatever the election is. And then next, for the state vote, divide the class into 5 groups, kind of like representing different states. Group 1 would have 1 student. Group 2 would have 3 students. Group 3 would be medium-sized. Group 4 and 5 would have more students in them, depending on the number of groups you're working with. And then have each state vote for a candidate. And to me, this is a lot like what happened in the Grace for President book, where I might represent Texas, but I have 34 votes. Or group 2 would have 3 votes, that kind of thing, exemplifying the Electoral College and what the state vote is. So activities about polling. You want students to participate and so that they can understand what that concept means. And so ideas for activities for them include vote for a principal for a day. So have students participate in a poll to choose one of the presidential candidates, or most systems can be set up like either virtually or with a tally vote if you're in person. You could do a group poll, divide the class into groups using a characteristic, long and short hair, poll the groups on the candidates, create new groups with different attributes, such as desk locations, and poll them again. And create a table or a chart to display the results and discuss the differences in the groups. Activities for understanding polling. This would be your older students also. Students voting on a preference for president, Congress, or local authorities have an undecided category, and then lead a discussion with your students about that. You could also brainstorm important issues with the class and choose like the top 4 issues and lead debates or poll the groups explaining why this one should be the top issue or fit in the top 4 group. And why it's important to be an informed voter. So we always want to encourage our students to take part in the democratic process, and students will be curious, like, how do you get to vote? What does that mean? And so you could just talk with them. You sign up to vote, you register, you research and think about the choices and issues that will be decided. Find out where your polling place is. And then once you're there, you'll go into a private booth and mark your ballot. And then you'll insert your ballot into the tabulator or the box. And then usually they'll give you a little sticker if you'd like one. Younger students, it's just you're building awareness, and when they go and they become more aware, they're able to find things in their world they didn't see before. Um, so educate the students, hold elections, make decisions for the class with voting. It builds ownership, creates situations where students can vote on these classroom issues or jobs. Learn who the community leaders are, write letters to them about issues you've studied. They will send you stuff back. It's so exciting to get stuff back in the mail. um, Even from the president, even from the mayor, and the students will be so excited. Form book group about voting or citizenship, hold mock elections, learn about the community or federal leaders, write letters. So who is who in my community? Um, Find out who your leaders are at the local, state, and federal level. And usually we talk about this even in second grade, put their pictures up. Think about the issues in the community that the students could look out for. Invite the children to take action. Ideas might be taking care of a park area, collecting trash, collecting food for those in need, including others to play, taking donations to give to others. And so lots of ways. And again, especially for my younger students, I'm building awareness. They may not have realized that's how things work, but when they go out into their community and their world, they'll be aware and they'll see things, and it will be very exciting for them. So things to remember. Teach the vocabulary. Mastering relevant vocabulary is so crucial to understanding many social studies concepts. The election season is a fitting time to reinforce vocabulary terms since students are hearing these terms on a regular basis. Understand polling. Many news reports will focus on public opinion polls that are trying to predict how people will vote on election day. Students across all the grades should understand candidates use the poll results to know which groups support them and which groups need to be persuaded still. You also want them to understand how the Electoral College works. One of our biggest challenges in the following election night coverage during presidential election is understanding that role of the Electoral College. We want students to see the difference between the popular vote and the Electoral College vote. And finally, the big takeaway of this is teaching about elections is a great way to cover your state and local standards. Demonstrating like concepts through activities only deepens the students' understanding, and they develop skills such as problem solving, critical thinking, communication. They use graphs and charts, and they learn how to support a position with like data and other evidence. So there's lots of takeaways to involve the students, to teach them, and to help them learn about the voting process, the democratic process, and what happens with elections. Demonstrating social science concepts through activities not only deepens their understanding, but really teaches skills such as problem solving, critical thinking, communication, and being able to support a position with data and evidence. And today's children are tomorrow's leaders, and we want them to be thoughtful, informed, and assertive, caring leaders. And we want that for our students because they will be the leaders for tomorrow. Thank you, guys. This is the end of our presentation.
If you have any questions, would you take a moment to type into the chat box? Linda says, thank you very much, Freddie.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Aurora says, lots of great ideas.
Very enjoyable, thoroughly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Linda says, I needed this. Everyone, please follow the link and take the time to do the evaluation for us. We would very much appreciate it.
Just to let you guys know, the link is not working.
Okay, let's try
Yeah, didn't work for me either.
okay, let's try again. Okay, it worked for me, so try it again, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Claudia says, I actually just purchased Duck for President.
It's a great book.
Chantel says, great ideas and resources. Looking forward to starting next week.
Awesome.
And you're free to leave if you have no questions and once you follow the link to the evaluation. We do appreciate your attendance. The copy of the webinar will appear on the website in a couple of days. The recording will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a question from McKenna. Any activities you would recommend for a K-3 classroom, ones that would involve every student?
I would start with that book, Be Kind by Pat Miller. It really breaks down so many ways to be a good citizen, and just having a discussion with your students about what that means and what kindness looks like and how to go about being even as a student, what kindness looks like and what citizenship could look like through that lens. I would start there.
Freddie, do you mind if I share one thing I did?
Yes, please. Yes.
I read the story of the Three Little Pigs, and then I read the true story of the Three Little Pigs from the wolf's perspective. And I had to vote on who did they think was telling the truth.
Oh, yes.
So they enjoyed that.
Oh, I bet they would.
Thank y'all for that. I'll definitely take a look at both of those books when I'm planning my lessons.
Thank you. Thank you again. And remember, once you follow the link to the evaluation, if you have no further questions, you are free to leave. Okay, Freddie, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.